Hello and welcome everyone to the Environment Primer series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pragya and today we are going to discuss an important and a significant topic that helps us in conserving our biodiversity. The title of our today's discussion is Eco-sensitive zones. In this discussion, we'll firstly study about what are these eco-sensitive zones. We are also going to see the background of creation of eco-sensitive zones in India. We are also going to analyze how are they created, what are the issues in their creations and a way forward in this regard. We are also going to see a practice question for your prelims examination and a practice question for your mains examination. So if I talk about the background of our today's topic, recently in a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court has held that you need to determine 1 kilometer radius area around the protected areas, wildlife sanctuaries and national parks as eco-sensitive zones. Eco-sensitive zones. So 1 kilometer radius of area. Okay. So the Supreme Court has explicitly asked the government to determine this one area within 1 kilometer radius around the protected areas, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries as eco-sensitive zones. So this brings us to the moot question of our today's discussion, that what exactly are these eco-sensitive zones. So if I talk about the eco-sensitive zones in very simple terms or in very layman terms, it means protecting the protected area, protecting the protected area. Okay, so you are converting a area of lower protection into a area of higher protection. Why? Because we humans have already destroyed our earth. Human activities is interfering with the natural activities, and that is why to save the biodiversity, ecosystems are created. They are insulated zones in which restricted activities allowed. Restricted activities more restricted than the reserve forest or protective forest. That means the normal activities cannot go on in these ecologically sensitive areas, and that is why they are created. If you ask me, ma'am, what is the significance of creating these eco-sensitive zones? So firstly, protection of natural heritage. Protection of natural heritage. Natural heritage. Then, in situ conservation. In situ conservation. Then combating forest depletion. Combating forest depletion. Combating forest depletion. Conservation of biodiversity. Conservation of biodiversity. And definitely protecting the protected areas because they require protection. So we are creating these eco-sensitive zones around our already protected areas such as the wildlife sanctuaries and the national parks. So who determines this eco-sensitive zones? It is notified by the central government, that is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Kindly remember this point, that who determines the eco-sensitive zones in India and under which legislations are they determined. Moving forward, let us discuss the background of creation of the eco-sensitive zones in India. So they started being created from 2000s itself, and the guidelines of ESZs are laid down by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. These guidelines vary from one protected area to another depending on the ecological importance and sensitivity of the region. Now let us understand the years from which the framework regarding the eco-sensitive zones are finally created. Okay, let us analyze the background of their creation. So the year was 2002, and in this year came the wildlife conservation strategy. So this wildlife conservation strategy talks about reserving 10 kilometer area radius as eco-fragile zone. Eco-fragile zone. So basically it talked about reserving a area of 10 within the 10-kilometer radius around the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries as well as the protected areas, considering them as eco-fragile zones. Okay, then in 2005, addressing concerns of the state, National Board of Wildlife decided that the delineation of eco-sensitive zones should be site-specific and related to regulation rather than prohibition of specific activities. So as I was explaining to you before also, that in these eco-sensitive zones, the regular activities are not allowed. They are even more stringent than the reserved forest and the protected forest. So the National Wildlife Board said that no, the states are now concerned. So instead of prohibiting activities completely, will try to regulate the activities within these zones. Then in 2006, in Goa Foundation versus Union of India, the Supreme Court ordered all states UTs to comply to the 2005 order. After various interventions by the Supreme Court in 2011, finally, because after 2006 or 5, nothing was done by the central government. They were completely silent on this. So in 2010, what happened was the Supreme Court intervened, and finally in 2011, MOE, or the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, released the guidelines regarding creation of eco-sensitive zones around national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. And in these guidelines, the 10-kilometer area radius is specified. Okay, so this is the background of the eco-sensitive zones in India. Now, let us discuss the creation process of this eco-sensitive zones. So firstly, there is a creation of inventories. Creation of inventories determines the activities. It is an inventory of all of the activities that are already going on in those areas. So these are determined with the help of range officers, and then they decide which activity could be regulated, which activity has to be prohibited, and so on and so forth. So they create an inventory of activities. After this, there is a constitution of a committee. So the committee is tasked with demarcating the eco-sensitive zone as well as creating a management plan. And finally, notification of these eco-sensitive zones. Who notifies it? As I have explained it to before also, and as I am mentioning it again and again, it is notified by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So finally, the committee puts forward a proposal to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and on that proposal, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change creates a eco-sensitive zone. Now let us determine that what are the issues in the creation of these eco-sensitive zones, because we have seen that protests are going on in Kerala and other states are specifically after the coming of the Supreme Court judgment. So the first issue is opposition from states. Protests are going on because the states are, finding it difficult to create these zones due to the high density of human population around the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries as well as the protected areas. So they are saying that we are already conserving the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries and other protected forests, reserve forests. Now you are asking us to create another eco-sensitive zone. So they are finding it very difficult due to the dense human population. Okay. Then there is lack of participative planning exercise while implementing the eco-sensitive zones. There is lack of awareness as well, because the people are not aware that they should save the biodiversity. The human wildlife conflict should be reduced. So there is a lack of effective planning in, demarcating the eco-sensitive zones. Sometimes what happens is they falsely demarcate the areas on the topographical maps. So this all is also happening. Okay. Then difficulty in implementing a uniform buffer zone. So obviously there is going to be a difficulty in implementing this 1 kilometer buffer zone for all areas. Okay. So the Supreme Court judgment will definitely be difficult for the states to implement. So what they will do, they will bring new laws, they will change their governance and will try to limit this eco-sensitive zones. Definitely it is not possible to maintain a uniform buffer area due to various areas like various national parks, area around national parks are more ecologically fragile, more ecologically sensitive. So they need definitely more protection than other areas. So expecting a uniform buffer zone is not possible. Then there are other difficulties as well, as I have explained, that the locals are also protesting because they feel that if the certain activities are prevented, are regulated, definitely it is going to hamper their livelihood which comes through forests. So these are the issues in creation of these eco-sensitive zones. Now let us analyze some of the way forward in this regard. What can we do to successfully implement these eco-sensitive zones or eco-fragile zones? See, on one hand we have the conservation of biodiversity in our hand. On another hand, we have to see that yes, we are able to take concern of the community as well, the states as well. So both the sides have to be balanced out. So there is a need for promoting eco restoration. So for example, afforestation programs, for example, another program such as conservation, creating awareness about conservation efforts, creating awareness about afforestation, and there is a need to promote the conservation of biodiversity among people as well. Then need for awareness, as I was talking about, yes, the local community should be aware about the importance of conservation of biodiversity. They should be made aware about their rights, etc., so that you minimize the conflict, minimize the protest around the creation of the eco-sensitive zone. Then collaboration on different levels, not only at the central government level, not only at the state government level, but also at the grassroots level, such as you need to involve the gram sabhas, etc., so that you can implement these policies effectively by taking the interest and the considerations of local communities also in regard. Okay, then achieving sustainable development. Most of these states are protesting because they feel that creation of these eco-sensitive zones will definitely hamper development. So you need to sustainably develop. If you are cutting some of the trees, if you are cutting, so you should replant those trees for development projects, and this happens with the creation of eco-sensitive zones as well. For example, where there is really eco-fragile zone or eco-fragile area, only that area should be protected instead of declaring an arbitrary area as a eco-sensitive zone. So protect the areas, create awareness, increase awareness about the same, have some other plans as well, such as afforestation, etc., and you need to have sustainable development around those areas. Okay, so this can be some of the way forward in you successfully implementing the eco-sensitive zones. With this, we come to a conclusion of our today's discussion. We have seen what are eco-sensitive zones. We have also seen the background of their creation in India. We have also analyzed how are they created and what are the issues in the creation of the eco-sensitive zones. Now let us discuss a practice question for your prelims examination. So the question is, consider the following statements. So statement number 1 is eco-sensitive zones are declared by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Your statement number 2 is 10 kilometer radius around national parks and wildlife sanctuaries are declared as eco-sensitive zones. Which of the following statements given above are correct? Options are, option A is 1 only, option B is 2 only, option C is both 1 and 2, and option D is none of the above. Kindly drop your answers in the comment box below. Now let us analyze a practice question for your mains examination. So the question is, how are eco-sensitive zones helpful in preserving biodiversity? Comment. So firstly, you will write about the eco-sensitive zones, that yes, it means that protecting the protected area, and you will write about the recent Supreme Court judgment that yes, 1 kilometer radius area has to be declared as a eco-sensitive zone. And then you will write about the depleting natural biodiversity, the threat of invasive species, the threat of human wildlife conflict, because that is happening. We humans are tampering with the natural habitat of animals. We humans are tampering with the natural processes. So creation of these eco-sensitive zones is important in conserving a natural biodiversity of a ecologically sensitive area. So you'll write about all of this and you can conclude holistically that yes, there are issues, but yes, these eco-sensitive zones should be promoted in our efforts towards in conserving the biodiversity. So you can conclude very holistically. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such updates. Thank you.